All right, welcome everybody to Finding Focus, Mindfulness for Extracurricular Activities. We are all glad you're here today. We're gonna give everybody maybe a minute or two to join us. In the meantime, we're going to start with some introductions. My name is Jana Netterfield. I'm a community health program coordinator for Alana Health, and I have been one of the facilitators for Change to Chill programming since its inception. I've been with Alana for about 10 years and have been working on mindfulness and mental health and wellness related activities probably for the vast majority of that time. On a personal note, today we're going to talk a lot about extracurricular activities and bring up a lot of examples related to sports, athletics, theater, chess, dance, you name it. I have a lot of experience working with young athletes, and as an adult athlete, I do speak a lot to coaches and groups of adults who do facilitate a variety of different mindfulness activities for as part of their extracurricular activity that they are involved in. I also work with groups of adults who have had no exposure to mindfulness and just willing and wanting to learn more. Maybe you are one of those folks who heard something perhaps on social media or internet or TV around mindfulness for extracurricular activities or athletics and would like to learn more. So any and all of you are in the right place. My co-facilitator today is Stacy Bessanen, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hello, thanks, Jana. Yes, so my name is Stacy Bessanen, and I've been working at Alana Health for about 20 years. And like Jana, have been with the Change to Chill program since it started. And yeah, so today, when we're talking about finding focus, it's really about living your best life and looking at those things that are most important to you, and really being in that moment when you are doing those activities that fulfill you and kind of lead you on your purpose and your passions. So yeah, thanks for having us today, and we look forward to facilitating.
Awesome. So this is an interactive session. If you do have any questions, please put them in a chat box. Stacy and I will be monitoring the chat box, and hopefully we will be able to answer some of your questions. I will refer a lot to, just like I said, maybe some experiences on a personal level from athletics, as well as some other extracurricular activities and the groups that I have been working with. And I'm sure Stacy will have some examples from her personal experience with mindfulness for a variety of activities as well. So we really would love for you to get whatever you would like to get out of this session. We will cover a variety of different topics. We'll talk about mindfulness. We'll explain the benefits and of the practices of mindfulness in preparation for any activity. We'll talk a little bit about how to access the tools and resources for teams and individuals that participate in a variety of different activities. And then we'll talk a little bit about grief and loss and coping strategies to help our athletes and those participating in a variety of activities to just cope with change. There is going to be an experiential activity today. If you're not a mindfulness practitioner, don't be afraid. You will be just fine. Stacy is going to lead us in one of the activities that we do introduce to our participants in whatever chess clubs or volleyball, hockey, you name it. So we will practice one of those together today, just to give you a little bit of a taste of what that feels like to have that experiential activity. If you have had no previous exposure to mindfulness, that is totally okay. Just sit back and relax, and we'll guide you through the entire practice today. There is going to be some interactive activities, and we would love for you to use a chat box for whenever we have chat time, so that we can not only answer your questions but also have some feedback from you to the questions that we will pose to the group. So what is mindfulness? Why are we here? Why are we talking about it? How does it relate to athletics, any other extracurricular activities? It is really the act of bringing awareness to the present moment by acknowledging and accepting your thoughts, feelings, sensations in your body. It's being fully present in what is today and what is right now in this moment, and not letting yourself multitask in a variety of different ways. So mindfulness is really about bringing your attention to today. It's bringing your attention to right now. It's bringing your attention to whatever activity or whatever it is that you're doing in a present moment. So that brings us to our chat time. And the question is for the group, and we would love to hear some answers from you guys, is what is your last mindful experience that you can think of that you felt completely present in the moment, where you weren't disconnected from your activity, where you weren't multitasking in 500 different ways. You were just really, really present with what was happening. And I guess I will start with my example. I took time today, and I normally don't do that. I am one of those type A personalities that is always go, 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 run, run, run. So I have to work on this whole mindfulness thing every day. So I took time today and I looked out of my window, and I, for a minute or two, just really focused on the beauty of the season. It was snowing this morning, and to some of us that means some terrifying drive time, but for some of us who perhaps are at home, we could actually enjoy the moment. And today was probably one of the rare times where I stopped and really appreciated the beauty of the season. So what about you guys? Stacy, do we have anything in our chat box?
Yeah, we have walking in the snow earlier today. So somebody got out there and enjoyed the snow as well. Someone said carving pumpkins with my kiddos, mountain biking with my German Shepherd on Monday. So a lot of really good ones, just activities and being moment. I'm cleaning the house. It's another one.
That is a good one.
It
You know,
is.
I love that example. A lot of times, Stacy and I talk about it all the time. We've been working together for a while, and we think of mindfulness as sometimes something we need to bring focus to something. But you can mindfully brush your teeth, and you can mindfully clean the house. And it's those everyday activities sometimes that we don't really focus on or bring attention to. And when we do, we find something new and different about where the dirt is, right, in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
So
sure.
yeah. So if you have any other thoughts that come in, please feel free to post them in the chat, and so other people can see them.
And we will talk about a variety of different things today, but if you have general questions about mindfulness and maybe just questions as we go through presentation, pop them into the chat and we'll be able to hopefully address them today. So mindfulness for extracurricular activities. Self-admittedly, I have a lot of exposure and experience with athletics and helping teams, a variety of different teams, to really be mindful and have that ability to connect to their inner selves, the folks on the team that I have been working with, or teams that I've been working with. However, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've been exposed to a variety of different groups, specifically teenagers and young adults. I worked with some teens in a chess club, in a theater setting as well. So for that reason, you know, we want to bring attention not to just athletics, but any kind of activities, extracurricular activities that that are outside of the normal kind of the spectrum of athletics. That said, though, any of the information that we give you today, or any of the tips that we give you today, they're applicable to the curricular activities. So actual schoolwork that our kids having sometimes hard time focusing on or being mindful with. So any of those tips are good for pretty much anything we all do in the daily life. So there's a ton of research around the benefits of practicing mindfulness, and it's linked to increased academic and athletic performance. and just overall success and readiness for competition, ability to perform at your best. What we will do after we are done with our presentation, within the next 24 hours, you're going to get a follow-up email with a survey. And also we will include all these resources and all the links to a variety of different research out there. So if you would like to read a little bit more, we're not going to spend a lot of time on very specific research pieces that we base this presentation on. But if you would like to have some of that information and maybe dig in a little bit on your own, we will provide that to you after the presentation. So some of the pillars of the mindfulness that we talk about as it relates to everyday activities and also anything related to athletics or extracurricular activities are the ones that you see on your screen. So non-judging, just being aware of your automatic judgments about everything and anything, your feelings, what you see, how it relates to you. So sometimes what prevents us from enjoying the moment or being fully present is what we think about where we're at or what is going on. So me looking today at outside and seeing beautiful snow, my first thought was do I have to go anywhere today? Oh my goodness, the driving is going to be horrible. So all these things, those are automatic judgments just plop into your head about what it is that you're doing or trying to be present with. Patience. Each thought is your just life in this moment. So be patient with the moment. Be patient with yourself, especially if you live a very fast-paced life. Be patient with the fact that you can take a minute and really just pause and really meditate, for lack of a better word, on this experience. And with our teens too, we're so impatient, you know, especially if you have had experience coaching a team, for example, you know how kids are wanting to move on with their skill. They just want to gain all the skills right now, very quickly. There is that lack of patience in progression. So one of the pillars of mindfulness is teaching just that, being patient with the process, having that beginner's mind. So this is very difficult. And we spend a lot of time with this one when we talk about mindfulness for extracurricular activities. Having a beginner's mind is pretending, again, in a way that everything that you are currently experiencing, you're seeing for the first time. So, for example, every single breath you're taking is a new breath. You have never taken this breath before. This is a brand new one. Yes, you've taken other breaths that might be similar to this one, but this one that you just took was a new one. So how does it apply to, say, life on the court, for example? And you know, you've been learning a skill, or you've been teaching your teens a skill or your kids a skill. And how do you look at learning this skill like you've never, ever learned this before? How do you absorb information without that judgment of, oh, I know how to do this, this is how it's done? How do you look at this new resource or new information in a very, very beginner's mind way? So again, this is one of the pillars of mindfulness, something we will talk about as well. Trusting yourself and your feelings to become more fully yourself. So that trust and trusting your feelings is really important. It's important when you are in a situation where you are competitive. That, you know, that gut feeling, that ability to say, okay, do I go right or do I go left? And how do you quickly transition to where you need to be? That is the powerful practice of mindfulness. Non-striving, this one is really tough. Being yourself, you already are everything that you need to be. And this is a tough one because we all strive. And when we talk about athletics or anything that has any kind of competition component in it, you want to be the best. You want to strive to be the best. So we will talk a little bit about today, what does it really mean to win? Does it mean to win a game? Does it mean to win sectionals? Does it mean to put on the best performance available and take first place? Or does it mean personal progression? And how do you translate into talking to your teens and young adults about that? Acceptance, seeing things as they actually are in the present. And now is the only time you have for anything. So accept the fact that sometimes we cannot change the present. In fact, the present is what it is. The future is where we have that ability to shape and form something new. But the present, that acceptance of the present sometimes prevents us from moving forward with a better future for ourselves. And letting go. So this one is fundamentally so very important. I spent a ton of time just talking about that with teens and with adults who coach teens in doing any kind of activities. And that is that cultivating an attitude of non-attachment, especially to the negative experience. So what I'm talking about is, I'm going to use volleyball as an example. You're on the court and you had a bad serve and it went right into the net. If you know anything about volleyball, not a good deal. You want to have great serves all the time, right? And to some teens and adults, this type of experience would mean it was a bad serve. I will not be able to complete any good serves moving forward, right? And you kind of start to spiral. As an adult, I wish I could tell you it gets easier, or we gain more wisdom, or we become more apt to let go. But majority of you on the call who are adults, you probably know that that's not the case. As adults, letting go does not become any easier. We hang on to our emotions, we hang on to our experience, especially bad ones. We hang on to pretty much anything and everything. So how do you, as a teen, on the court, let go of a bad serve and say, was a bad serve, next serve is gonna be awesome? It's much easier said than done. And that's where mindfulness comes into play. Sometimes you're going to have a lot of bad experiences that you're going to have to let go of immediately. So we will talk about that immediacy of letting go. How do you help somebody say, okay, this was really bad, did not work out at all, and you have to move on right away? How do you do that? So that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one for all of us. So with all this mindfulness talk, intentionality is everything. So you have to have the discipline to persevere in the process, and being intentional with mindfulness and mindful attitude. It's really tough. And you see this note here by John Kabat-Zinn, and it's a little bit when you read it, it's like, well, we have to develop a strong meditation practice. We are not saying you have to spend hours every day, or encourage your kids to spend hours every day doing a very deep meditative experiences. It's more about how do you integrate mindfulness into your everyday practices. Literally waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth for 2 minutes. That is difficult. When you, I recently was at the dentist's office, and we had this really interesting conversation about how difficult it is for people to actually stick to the 2-minute time frame. And I bet if I would ask a question of our audience today as to how often do you actually spend the full 2 minutes brushing your teeth, some of you would, if you're really honest with yourself, would say, yeah, probably not. We give up after a certain amount of time because we're not present with the importance of this practice of brushing your teeth, right? So that intentionality in everything that you do, you go somewhere and you just notice things. One of the things that I like to ask teenagers when I work with them on mindfulness generally is, when were you, especially the ones that can drive themselves places, when did you go to Target or Walmart last? Or Starbucks or Caribou, somewhere, where you can actually go in and get stuff. And they would say, well, yesterday. What was the name of your cashier? What was the name of your barista? Did you even notice? Right? So it's one of those deals where I would ask any adult or a kid, do you have a best friend? Yep, I do. What's their name? It's their name is Amy, Stacy. What color eyes do they have? Think about that. Do you know your best friend's eye color? And that is, those are the little things, the presence, the ability to really connect with people you're around, and also experiences that you have on a daily basis. So it's a really interesting concept. So the benefits of mindfulness, it will reduce worry and nervousness before any kind of competition or event. I have not yet in my practice seen an athlete who did not benefit from some sort of mindfulness practice. I just haven't. Even the ones that are really resistant to practicing anything new or different, with time, they will see the benefit that it brings. So we'll talk a little bit about that today too. Active listening and engagement, that promotes, among teens especially, the more mindful they are about their own performance and also performance of their team or the environment they're in, the more apt they are to engage and listen better. It will create a well-rounded performer. We'll talk a little bit about, again, the concept of winging versus your best performance. And then decreases mental multitasking. Stacy is actually, when she facilitates classes with me, she talks a lot about the fact that you can't really multitask. That is one of those myths that we fall into, and we say, oh, I can multitask so very well. Multitasking is basically not paying attention to anything or not being ingrained into anything in depth. It's just kind of brushing the surface when related to any of the experiences. So here's the meat of our conversation today too. So does a mindful performer equal winging performer? What do you guys think? Does it or does it not? In some cases it might, but it not necessarily. So we have to really, as adults, and also as helping our teens, we have to help them redefine what win really means. So what is the most beneficial for your performers' personal growth? Is it to win a game? Is it to be the best at the dance competition? Is it having such phenomenal group theater performance so that you placed first? Or perhaps it is doing your best. You know, we always hear that, well, just do your best and it's going to be okay. But again, you know, it's one of those phrases that everybody says it, but nobody actually, well, not nobody, but a lot of people actually don't do it, right? It's one of those things where you have to be very cognizant about what you say and actually implementing it. So prime example of that, you have a team that is going into a game with another team who is well known to be the best. It had the opposite team, the team that you're playing against, they have not lost a game yet. And you perhaps are not a very strong team in terms of your performance. Perhaps you lost all the games so far. So you're going against someone who you know most likely you're going to lose against. So what do you do? What are your thoughts on that? Are you going to go into the game and say, well, we're going to lose anyway, so let's just, you know, play it? And are you trying to encourage people to win, knowing that most of the time they probably are not going to get there? Is it going to create disappointment at the end of the performance, right? Or do you take this concept of win and reframe it and say to each individual player on that team, what does winning mean to you? What will it mean today for you to do your best? Not just generally saying, go do your best, but what does it mean to each individual person on that team? And maybe when we're talking about you as an adult, what does it mean for you to win? So I've been in those situations when I was coaching a team that was a losing team in comparison to other teams. And yet each person on that team in that losing outwardly performance succeeded tremendous and shown tremendous growth. So for some people, it's I'm gonna jump as high as I can, like I want to or I want to score a perfect, you know, 3-pointer, or I want to get all my serves over the net, or I want to not forget any of my lines in today's performance, and to me it's going to be a win. So it's really important to define. Mindfulness is about defining what winning and success is going to look like to individual and group performance before that performance actually happens. So that then when you get to the other side, whether you lost game, won game, does not really matter at that point. You can look back and say, did you accomplish what you set out to accomplish for your definition of growth in this game? So eliminating mental blocks for performance. So that mindful attitude is really, really important. So a lot of times with adults and kids and teens, we see this all the time. And you know that probably within yourself as well. You're going into something that you have been practicing doing. And I'm going to actually use something that has nothing to do with athletics. How about making a pie? If you are proficient in baking, that's probably a piece of cake for you. And that was a funny analogy. for you, making a pie is like, you've done it 100 times and it's all good and we're gonna, go ahead and do it again. For some of us, baking it is an art and it's a very tough task. Making that perfect dough, man, it can be very, very difficult. So say I failed in making pies the last 3 times I tried, right? And you can translate it into any experience when it comes to athletics or your teens. We can find plenty of examples. But the last 3 times I made a pie, I failed. So going into my 4th time of making this pie, I can say, well, probably not going to turn out good. That is your mental block for performance. So you're sitting here and saying that you will not be able to accomplish something before that something even takes place. And that's tough to break. As an adult, and I used an adult example for a reason, because as an adult, you probably know how difficult it actually is to eliminate mental blocks. Think about teens who don't have the experience and the point of reference and maybe the wisdom, inner wisdom, right, to help them with those mental blocks. It's even more difficult, especially if you fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. How can you say that you will succeed at some point? So this is tough, and this is where mindful techniques like visualization and guided imagery can really, really help. And Stacy will walk us through some visualization techniques today as well. One of the things, though, I want you to remind the teens that you're working with and yourself when you're running into the mental blocks of I can't, I won't be able to succeed, or I'm going to fail, is think about a toddler, or think about an infant going into toddler, right? And I have a 9-month-old, so this is really near and dear to my heart. How often do they fall before they walk, right? So my little son tries to get up time after time after time after time and plops back on his butt every single time, or forward sometimes on his nose, which is not pleasant. Bad experience, one after the other, after the other. Those of you who have kids or have been around kids, it happens probably thousands of times before they actually make a step. But the question is, what if my toddler, infant going into toddler, said, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's too hard. I don't think this walking is going to work out for me. Well, does that ever happen, right? It never happens. So that perseverance, you have to go into the experiences sometimes of really young people in our lives to look at the perseverance. They will fail after fail after fail to get themselves to where they need to be. So you have to, going into our next point, create that performance mindset. It's not about whether I fail or lose. It's not about the game being good or bad. It's about how will I perform in it? What does it mean to me? So if I failed at my 100-pound deadlift the last 4 months that I've been working on it, what would be a success for me? In the next 6 months, I would like to get to a 100-pound deadlift. And these are the steps I'm going to take to get myself there, right? Discovering quiet place. You hear a lot of the professional athletes talk about that, and you probably see it on their faces when they're kind of going to this own space where all the clutter and everything around them disappears. And one of the good techniques that helps with finding that quiet place for performance is deep breathing and also visualization. So where you tune out everything that's happening, where you tune out the crowd, even though in our current situation, crowds are probably not going to be present for a little while, but nonetheless, you tune out the other team, you tune out pretty much everything other than what you're doing. And that is called a quiet space. And then developing the skill of letting go. So I had a bad experience. I had a bad serve. How did you find the immediacy of letting go? This is a really tough one. And we spend a lot of time talking about that with athletes and also with adults who coach any kind of extracurricular performance or not performance based activities, is you have to really disconnect from the negative and accept your next attempt as a complete new experience, as a complete new positive, hopeful experience. You might fail at that serve again, and that's okay. The next experience is going to be brand new. You have to cultivate that in the teens and young adults that you work with. There is no way that they're going to gain that skill just by you telling them once, oh, you're just going to let go and you'll be fine. Just like that, us adults have to do that with our feelings, with our minds. If you had a bad experience, you have to let it go and move on, move away from the bad feeling, move away from bad experience, move into a complete new experience and create whatever you want that to be. So chat time, and this is a tough question. How do you guys let things go? Share some wisdom with us. And I will start. I have really hard time with that one. I think a lot of us do, and self-admittedly, I'm one of those people. So I have to be very mindful about the fact that whatever happens next is not going to define how I feel about myself. So how I let it go is I say, well, even if I fail in my next attempt of doing whatever, I'm going to be proud of the fact that I tried. What about you? Stacy, do we have anything in the chat?
Nothing yet. Nothing yet. So
that's a tough one.
It is. Oh, here's one. So I stop and ask myself if it really matters. Will it matter, change my life in an hour from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? And then another one is, another one is refocus my energy into something positive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and when it comes to big things, it's the same. The same concept applies. You know, we have really negative life experiences sometimes, and we just carry the baggage. That, you know, people say, let it go, let it go. You know, how long are you going to carry it with you? You know, that baggage really is just the baggage that you carry. That is absolutely unnecessary, and it's hard to teach our teens that, but I think reiteration is one of the things that we stress out is really important in that case. So your mindful athlete, and this is George Mumford. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with his book, The Mindful Athlete. If you are not, I will send you a link, and I think it's a wonderful starting point for those who want to explore mindfulness for athletics or any kind of extracurricular activities. And he talks about the fact that well-training body is really important, of course, especially if you perform at the level that Kobe Bryant performed at, or Michael Phelps, or any of the other athletes that George Mumford worked with. If you perform at that level, of course, physicality is important, but training your body is not the only way that you can succeed. It's really important to train your mind in order for you to advance in any kind of performance-based activity. And it's really interesting. So Michael Phelps actually is a huge proponent of talking openly about mental wellness. And he has, if you have not watched or seen any of his videos around mental health, I encourage you to explore that. So he talks a lot about his challenges with suicidal ideation and anxiety and depression and just mental health concerns. Especially, he talks about the 2016 Olympics and the challenges that he faced as an athlete, being already the best, how tough it was for him, how comparison really stole his joy. And he talks a lot about the fact that at the point in the game where you get to the Olympics, everybody's pretty good. It's not like people get there and they are mediocre. Everybody who makes it there is phenomenal. So at the point where everybody is really good, what defines a great athlete, right? And both him and George Mumford talk about the fact that at that point, it's all your mental game. It's mental state. It's how well your mind is positioned to let go if something bad happens. And he talks, Michael Phelps talks about the fact that during one of the swims, his glasses cracked. And he had to rely solely on his muscle memory, and he had to let go of that negative experience in order to advance himself in the competition. He swam blind because he trained his body and his body knew what to do. But most importantly, he talks about the fact that he had to immediately let go of the fact that something bad might be standing on his way. So it's that power of the mind. And so the benefits, I already talked about the Olympics and how that really is for Olympic athletes is a big deal to be really mentally aware and prepared. you're going to be a lot more motivated to exercise and will be a lot more satisfied to actually complete a workout. And then the athletes report a lot less sports-related anxiety. And together, mindfulness and relaxation practices, they have this protective sort of effect against the emotional and cognitive impacts of high demand and high stress times. So especially if you have teens who have to perform at the high level regularly, mindfulness is really a must to practice. So Stacy's going to walk us through some of the powerful practices, and we will do some experiential activity as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So there are definitely a lot more comments that came through in the chat regarding just what people do to let go. And so feel free to look at those. One that I noticed that somebody had put down was, when they're a little anxious, they go to something calming, which was music for them, and kind of letting go of control and just allowing to be in that moment of not doing as well, but then also knowing that that moment can be a satisfying experience, to allow yourself to be more motivated because it's getting you closer to the desired outcome. And then also just remembering that all of these, anything that we do around mindfulness can be done with athletics, but also student council, debate team, life smarts, anything and anything that you're doing, and anything that brings you closer to your passions and things that you are, anything that's important to you to live your best life. And so some other powerful practices, the first one here is meditation. And we start with that one because, as Jana was talking about, as it relates to multitasking, meditation is really part of mindfulness practice, but it's also, it really brings that single focus point. We're talking about finding focus. And so what is that single focus point that you can really hone in on? And as it relates to multitasking, our brains really can't multitask. Our brains are thought generators. They're meant to think. And so they're always thinking. So, if you're really trying to focus on one thing and your brain starts to think about something else, it's really not judging yourself for having those thoughts, because our brains are supposed to be generating thoughts, but it's about saying, oh, okay, oh, that thought came in, I'm thinking again, let me bring myself back to that single focus that I really want to hone in on right now. All multitasking is continuous partial awareness. And so when you're focused on one thing, I can give you an example. Let's say you're trying to read a book and watch TV at the same time. Can your brain take in both of those stimuli and catch everything? No. If you're reading a sentence, your brain is really focused on that. And then if you've just missed what's on the news or what's on that TV show that you're watching. So it can only go to attention to what you're focused on in that moment. So what mindfulness is just taking that time to have that mindfulness practice to be focused on that one thing. So it could be a variety of different things. It could just taking all your senses and looking at that snowflake and really focusing on it. And then the next one is self-talk. And so we are our own worst critics. So the things that we say to ourselves, positive and negative, your body doesn't know the difference. So if you're being really, really negative and you kind of say, oh, I just say this to myself and that's how it is. Your body does not know the difference between positive and negative talk. So just kind of thinking about what's your self-talk. If you're really critical of yourself, write those statements down and kind of think of, would you say that statement to someone else? And oftentimes people say, oh my gosh, I would never say that to someone else. So kind of turning that around and saying, then why do I say it to myself? So how can you change that self-talk into something positive. So as you're writing things down, like if you say, oh, I'm so stupid, why did I miss that that pitch, or why did I do so bad on that speech, or whatever that is, how can you turn that around into a positive for yourself to say, oh, well, I missed that pitch. So this next time I'm going to learn what I didn't do. Oh yeah, my feet were wrong. That I usually know I can hit that pitch when my feet are this way, or I didn't do so well on a couple lines of my speech because of these reasons. So next time I won't do those and I'll do better. Things like that. So self-talk is so very important, and self-talk can really be healing as well. The next one is guided imagery and visualization. And Jean has already talked a lot about that, but in the next couple of slides, I'm actually going to go through a visualization and guided imagery with you. Our brains are so very powerful. We can imagine something when we really focus on it like it's actually happening. So very powerful as it relates to anything that we're doing in life, any activity that we're doing. We can imagine it happening in a positive way. So then when we're actually doing the activity, we've already thought about it. Our body and mind and senses have already gone through it. So we can do the best that we can at that moment. The next powerful practice is breath awareness and deep breathing. So very important. Powerful, because our breath is with us all the time. And so if we can imagine and deep breathe and be aware of our breath in that moment, it can calm us, it can relax us, it can get us ready for whatever we're doing. If I know when I'm doing a big presentation and I have to walk into the room and there's 300 people there, I notice my body automatically does this, but then I also take a moment to have that mindfulness and that meditation moment where I'll just take even a deeper breath and be in that moment, just to calm myself down before I walk in. And then mindful movement. One of my favorite things to do is exercising and moving, any type of movement, if it's going for a walk or a run or doing some mindful stretching, whatever that is, because it helps put my mind and body in the moment. So when I'm out there running and I'm breathing hard, it's hard to be anywhere else. And it kind of, for me, slows time down, and so it makes the summer seem a little longer, and it makes me be in that moment a little bit longer. So mindful movement is very powerful. So the visualization how-tos, there's a lot of different things here. So when we visualize and when we have a moment, and I'm going to bring you through a guided imagery in a minute, but these are some things to think about when we're going through that. And the first one is to visualize the outcome. What are you hoping to achieve at the end of that activity? Using all your senses, bringing in what do you see? What do you smell in that moment? What do you feel? We oftentimes will use this a lot with some of our tactile or sensory patients who have a hard time with focusing, but when they're holding something soft or when they're able to do something with touch, they're able to focus that much more. So using all of your senses. And then we call it mindfulness practice for a reason, because your brain, it's not just a one and done. Your brain needs practice. So practice frequently is very important. And so I'm going to take you through this guided imagery really quick. So what I'll have you do is put your feet flat on the floor. Feel free to close your eyes if you'd like, or just look at something, just stare at something on your table. And just allow yourself to settle into the chair beneath you. And the ultimate goal when you're doing this is to find a quiet, comfortable place, somewhere where you can focus without distraction and just be in that moment and really mindfully meditate and focus. Okay, and the next step is just to breathe deeply until you start feeling more at ease. And just breathe. And then the next step is to imagine either a happy place to help yourself calm, or imagine the activity that you're going to be doing. If you're going to be going for a run, or you're going to be given a playing a volleyball game, or giving a speech for debate club, just imagine yourself, you're up there, you're getting ready, your note cards are in front of you. If you're going to go for like if you're going to run a race, just imagine yourself on that starting line, and just really imagine yourself in that moment. And then the step 4 is just to add all the details. So when you're in that moment, you can see it. You can see your happy place in your mind. You can see you're getting ready for this event. Adding in the details is so important. So what do you hear? What do you feel? What do you see around you? Even what do you smell? Adding in all the details of that moment. And then as you're going along, adding in the time frame, like as the game goes along, what's happening, how are you performing as the speech goes along, noticing that you're remembering all your lines. As your race, imagine yourself, how you're feeling, and if you're starting to feel tired, how you bring yourself more energy and keep going. And then the last step is just to hold on to this awesome feeling, and know that you can come back to it anytime that you need to, and be able to be able to just notice and be in that moment. So what I'll have you do now is take a couple of more deep breaths. And exhale. One more deep breath in, and as you exhale, wiggle your fingers and your toes, open your eyes if they're closed, and bring yourself back to the room.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. So that was one of the examples of some of the mindfulness activities that you will find on our website. We have a section dedicated to just Change to Chill for athletes, and we have specific mindfulness reflection activity. And just to note here that those activities can be used for any type of like a debate club or speech team or any of the other extracurricular activities as well. So there's some specific things that you can use for those maybe performance-based extracurricular activities that are on the website. And so just a quick overview and quick mention to some of the other resources that we have. So we have a whole section on the website, changetochill.org, related to living with grief, loss, and change. And the reason why we're mentioning this in this presentation is because for a lot of our athletes, in this really tough environment right now with dealing with COVID and dealing with canceled games, canceled activities, canceled participation, and maybe some of the tournaments, it's a traumatic experience, and they experience loss. So as adults, sometimes we think of loss as losing a loved one or losing a pet, but any kind of change really presents a very tough transition for a lot of us, a lot of the teens and young adults. So any change in routine is something that they get to grieve as well. So we do have some resources as well. One of my favorite ones is Feelings Wheel. It's really important to help your teens to put words in place to describe how they're actually feeling, to help them deal with the loss or a change or grief that they're experiencing. So I would encourage you to explore that one on the website. And also there is an activity around reflection on the past, current, and future states. And that is also very, very instrumental in just helping adults and kids visualize kind of what the good future state looks like. So it's very much linked to the visualization activities as well. And really, just to close us out, I want to mention that mindfulness is a practice. It's not a destination. It's not like you're going to attend a whole bunch of webinars or learn everything you can learn about mindfulness and somehow you'll become mindful and and stay mindful. This is something that we practice on a daily basis, and a lot of us struggle with. And that's that honesty, even with our kids, with the teens that we work with, is really important, that we're not always mindful. And this is what we can do to help them and ourselves stay as mindful and as present as what we can be, especially now, especially in the tough, challenging times of virtual connections and loss of some of the activities that they're used to and we're used to facilitating. So we do have some upcoming trainings and some opportunities for you guys. We have what you see on the screen. We have one more part of the series for self-care for the soul. And then we also have some virtual mental well-being sessions that are led by community leaders, healers, and counselors. So you can take a look at the dates. And again, we will send those out as a link as well in the follow-up email. And then if you want to stay tuned to what's going on with our wellness promotion and activities and mental health resources for teens and adults, please sign up for our newsletter right here on the website. Again, let us know what you think. We're going to send out a survey with a whole bunch of links and information for you. And you should expect that within the next 24 hours. And please let us know how we did. And if you have any questions, we're going to stick around for a few minutes here. I'll open up the chat, and if you would like to ask a question or have anything to share, we're gonna be here for just a little while. Otherwise, thank you for participating, and it was very nice having you.